Sugar Bear Lamali, that took you back a little bit right there. When I dip, you dip, we dip. We all dipping around here. Mm-hmm. Good morning. Sugar Bear Lamali is 104.7 The Drop, Denver's urban alternative community corner. We love this every Thursday.
It is one of my favorite days of the week because we get to highlight the really incredible people and places in our community.
1,000,000%. And today's guest is no exception. Welcome, Philip Roybal. He's from Homies for Health, and that is a community health program for youth and adults. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, man. It means a lot to us so we can get the word out about what you're doing. Homies for Health, we'll talk to that a little bit. Give your background a little bit. You're a native from here, correct?
Yeah, I grew up here in Denver in the Curtis Park area, right on like 35th and Larmer.
Nice. Okay. And so this program, Homies for Health, how did you come up with that name, by the way?
Man, that's a long-winded answer. So
Give us a short-winded one.
let's see. My formal education and background is in orthopedics and injury and rehab. So
Got it.
My undergraduate degree is in what's called athletic training. The term is kind of misleading because it's more like injury and rehab. So if you watch like football and you see somebody go down on the field, the people that hit the athlete or hit the field are usually athletic trainers. So I worked for an outpatient orthopedic clinic for like 5 years. Back in like 2019, my brother was killed, and I always wanted to get into the orthopedic space. And I always wanted to bring some flavor to like rehab and sports performance and things like that. So what I did is I just rebranded everything that I was doing kind of out of his memory.
Nice. I love that. Okay, so community health program for youth and adults. This is important for our listeners to know because being caught up in the system at a young age can affect you like long term down the line, which is why this started. So give the overview of that and what that means.
Well, there's so many nuances where a youth being thrown into the justice system can set them up for failure. One, there's a lot of like mental health, behavioral health things that are not being addressed, right? They are kind of criminalizing what we would consider just adolescent behavior. Some facilities are extremely violent. You have, grown men that are staffed that are putting their hands on kids, getting restraint and things like that. And the youth are not getting the proper like emotional intelligence in terms of like how to deal with certain things that are coming on. And so these like outbursts are really a cry for help, right? There's things that are going on, and you can imagine anybody being caged or just idle time for somebody can lead to different things. Fortunately, though, I was able to kind of recognize for myself, in a sense, from doing time as a youth and an adult. In a way, I say that like I'm institutionalized minimally because of the structure the system gave me, right? I didn't know as a young man that's what I needed. Until I came back home, I followed that same routine, right? It was going to school, which was college. I had at that time I had young children, so I was just at home, and then I was in the gym, right? So when I look at that format, it's how can we recreate that structure for the young people once they come home?
Got it.
So that structure that you're creating in your programs, like, do you see that as a way to help sort of stem this, youth incarceration kind of, pipeline or?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head. So what in the work, they call it wraparound services, right? So if you look at a young person who get committed to Department of Youth Services or DYC, once they come home, they may be on parole and they may have access to mental health, behavioral health, but after that point, they don't. They're kind of left up to their own. And so what we try to do is intersect we do intersect within, like at Lookout Mountain, we will go work with youth that are inside there in terms of like a mentorship role to kind of, and the goal through that is just to build a relationship with the young person so that they know that they have somebody once they come home. I was lucky and grateful for the fact that like I had my family to kind of hold me down, and when I came home, I had my own family. A lot of our youth don't have that, we try to create that stable environment for them.
Which is very, very important.
Yeah.
Also, kids under 12 years old. Why? It's because it's right. 12. Is that when you went through some problems when you were young, around that age?
It was about 8th grade. About 7th grade, 8th grade, I got expelled out of school here. My dad sent me to Southern California, lasted a few months out there, got kicked out of school there, came back, got committed when I was like 15. I got committed when I was 16. I pulled like 2 years there, and then ended up going to prison when I was like 22.
Pull us through what it's like as a kid being, in that system, because you're still growing.
Yeah.
You're still right, and stable environment, how important that is and whatnot. Do you remember like your mind set and what you were thinking? Did you think it was over? Did you think you had a support system that you would get out of this? Did you have regrets? Like, put us in the mind of a 12-year-old, because you were there, what that's like for anybody, and any parent out there listening now too.
It's that kind of mind frame goes in two ways, and one of them becomes like you start to turn inwardly and kind of save yourself, right? And the young people that you are locked up with, they become your surrogate kind of family, right? And so that's how you start to kind of like not think about the things that are going on. And those things that are going on though are, it's isolation, it's not being able to see your family, it's not being able to talk to your family. You may or may not get a visit. So there's just like a lot of like emotional turmoil that is generated inside yourself, but you don't really know that it's there. And you don't really know how to process it.
You just dealing with
You
it.
just deal with it. But then you look at the camaraderie of the young people around you, and you guys just develop this relationship to where it just turns into adolescent play and adolescent fun. But you're still not addressing the things that are going on underneath. So it's like a twofold thing. And I don't want to say that I had fun. I didn't have fun at all, but you find a way to survive.
Right.
You find a way to survive. But finding that way to survive, you're turning a blind eye to the things that are going on in terms of the things that you haven't addressed or dealt with, or even have the emotional or mental capacity to even recognize.
Do you find that channeling the youth that you work with into like using their physical bodies, does that help them process a lot of what's happening to them?
Absolutely. I'm a true believer in like if movement is medicine, right? And I think, and there's a lot of, actually we could go even deeper. There's a lot of studies when adolescent, even prepubescent or post-pubescent youth, they have a higher volume of testosterone that's naturally going through them. So they need to have physical activity. When they don't have it, these look like emotional outbursts. And what it really is they're just not navigating that energy in the right way. And so when we create that structure for them, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Do you have like any stories, without getting too personal about kids, right? But any stories that you've seen a real change in somebody that you've been working with?
Absolutely. There was a young man that one of my coworkers was working with. He was working with him while he was at Lookout, and then he was working with him once he came home from Lookout. And they would always tell me, hey, this kid he's all over the place. He doesn't really pay attention to things like that. Maybe somebody would say he had ADHD and those type of things. He's just a very, very hyper kid. Once we brought him into the boxing gym, put him on the jump rope, put him on the speed bag, that energy, it was put to perfect use.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Movement is medicine. I want
Absolutely.
to talk about that a little bit for yourself, for the kids that we're speaking of, and how that helps and why that's so important, and also from a mental health standpoint. How's your mental health, number one? Do you address it? And also, are the kids getting the attention that they need from a mental standpoint?
Let me answer your first question. Are you asking me, is my mental health okay?
Yeah, I want to ask. I wanted you to talk about that, and also, for the kids in the program, or how that works.
Sure.
When it comes to their mental health.
Absolutely. I think, just to think back about like having just a reflection of, as a young man, I didn't know that I needed the structure of the gym. I didn't know I needed the structure that provided. I didn't know that I needed that kind of outlet. So in hindsight, looking back, absolutely, yes. I was able to kind of address a lot of the things that I was never able to address. I think some of our youth, though, are not presented with the opportunity to address their mental health, not even just address, but have mental health and behavioral health services, right? And that becomes like a larger political insurance thing where they're not having access to those things. And so with the organization that we work with, that's the gap in services that we are trying to provide.
Got it.
And like, how do you find any structural issues that stand in the way of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I could go on and on about system stakeholders and how the system is set up to not adequately treat these behavioral health and mental health things for youth. And some of that structure is changing the culture within them structures to get them to look at these things that it's not criminalize adolescent behavior, but let's look a little deeper and ask questions as to why.
Yeah, like what's going on?
What's really
Yeah.
going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And following your story, there was a bill that was, that they're trying to change some of the, the procedures, the laws, I
Yeah.
guess, if you will. I know there's some you can't speak about, but what can you speak to as far as like advancement and what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2021, I was approached by an organization called the National Center for Youth Law.
Okay.
I was contacted by them through another organization called Caudal Circles for Change. At that time, we were approached with a language of a bill that was called Raise the Age. Raise the age meaning raising the age at which a child could be charged with a crime. As of right now, it sits at 10 years old. We were trying to raise that age to 12.
I see.
There was a lot of pushback from the DA, as well as some other like mental health providers, as well as some of like system stakeholders in terms of they did not have the structure in place to identify the needs of those 10 and 11-year-olds, right? Because if we are saying we're removing them from the processes of the justice system, there are no services then for them.
I see.
So what they're saying is in order to receive the mental health and behavioral health services that they require, they need to be put into the justice system. But what they're also not saying is they're not receiving those services once they're there.
That's the part. So they got to create something. Yeah.
We have to create. So what we are trying to do is remove those youth from that point. We had a good run through that legislative session back in 2021. Our bill got killed towards the end. We were able to create a task force off that bill and partner with system stakeholders to identify the gaps, what we call gaps in services, and to see where we can, put our money where our mouth is and identify some of those needs, but put funding towards some of those needs. We ran the bill again for a second time after that and didn't come through. We are now looking at a bill called the Community Reinvestment Grant Program. And what that looks like is creating a system of funding for community-based organizations to address the gaps in services and remove kids from the system.
Got it.
Remove kids from the system in terms of true pre-arrest diversion, right? Diversion, you have to catch a case, you have to go to court, then you go to diversion. Deflection is prior to that. Deflection is saying putting some power back into the community once a youth's primary kind of interaction with law enforcement will happen at school. Right? And so what we need to do is give them the ability and knowledge to refer out to a community-based organization versus ticketing them.
Yeah.
Got it.
That's so powerful.
No, it's super powerful. We're talking to Philip Roybal. If you just turned in, he's with Homies for Health, which is a community health program for youth and adults. Tell the people how they can get a hold of you, or if they want more information, what do they do? Where do they go?
I'm currently working for an organization called Fully Liberated Youth.
Okay.
That organization provides mental health and behavioral health services for youth in the community as well as school-based mentorship. I could be contacted at my email. It's philip@fullyliberatedYouth.org. I think that would be probably the best way to get a hold of me.
That's right. Are you on social media as well?
I'm on social media also at Homies for Health.
Okay. Nice. Make sure y'all follow. If you have any questions, you can hit us up. He's here, 303-893-DROP. We'll send you information or links or whatever it is. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is super important to our community, and that's why we have this segment, Community Corner. So you're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Sugar Bear Lamali, and thank you for listening to 104.7 The Drop.